What is the end game, as you see it, of the Fed's easy money and low interest rate policy?
Well, I think there'll be an economic collapse because I think there will be a panic out of dollars. And that seems strange for a lot of people because right now it seems like people are panicking into the dollar. They're still taking them in spite of all the printing we're doing. But no, I think they'll leave, which means they'll buy stuff. They'll buy things, and they'll buy metals. They may continue to buy some stocks, but they will leave. And that means prices are going to go up. And then the inflation that people are all much aware of, and that is the cost of living, is going to skyrocket. I mean, today I looked at something that said, there was somebody, prices of houses were skyrocketing. Then there was a report, it looks like it's topped out and they're starting down again. But no, today again, they're still going up. So eventually there's going to be a continuation of what's happening right now. People can't afford the houses. That's why they're living on the street, So it'll be an exaggeration of that. And then we've already had the violence. And then we've already had the demagoguing. We've already seen the battle between the rich and the poor, and blaming the rich. And I blame the rich who have lived off the government and have gotten all the benefits from government. That is what bothers me. But I think it's a difficult choice right now because when you come to social media, they claim protection from the libertarian argument because they are, private and they can do what they want, and we're okay. But I don't see them as private. I think they have a lot of protection. You can't even sue them, So they get their protections. They get money. They've got an assistant, and I think that is why everything should be voluntary. The government should be out of the business. But I think it's going to be chaos. I think it's going to be really bad because we already saw it last summer. What it looks like when it just gets started a little bit. But I think it's going to be much worse. But there's going to, although I keep mentioning things, are bad and they're smoldering along and they're getting worse, and we see these problems. But I think there can be an issue, a moment that might be like a bell ringing, that even the markets discover, boy, this is something else. Right now, I think it was 2019 when the overnight rates skyrocketed, to 10%. That was a big event. And that's when they turned it on again, back to QE, and they're still doing it. So one of these times they're going to do that. An event will be like that. And the government said, don't sweat it. We know how to handle this. What we're going to do is this. We're going to do more. It might produce exactly the opposite. See, the markets were calmed down when they came in and supported the overnight rates and the purchasing by the government, the people, getting stuck with that. So no, that event will come. And when it comes, we don't know. And because I think everything is very, very fragile. I think there's no stability to the system. I see it as our economy, especially the United States economy or the West, it's like a skyscraper. It's built real high, but it might be like that apartment house in Florida. There might be something wrong in the foundation. And I think the foundation of our system is very, very fragile. And what the event will be, I don't think anybody knows. Sometimes it's somebody misconstruing something, and sometimes it's a foreign policy event. We're always involved. In my program today, we talked about all this bombing again over in Syria, and threatenings going on with Syria and Iran, and all these problems. One of these days, one of those events are going to get out of hand, and everybody will have to say, well, to be a good patriot, we have to defend it. Just think of the dramatic change in attitude in 1941, Pearl Harbor. As a matter of fact, they even talked economically about a Pearl Harbor event. And some people suggest maybe 9/11 will be this to take over everything. And there are people who are gearing for that. I think that's what the leaders of the cultural Marxist movement really want. So, and the more chaos you have, that's their goal. They want the chaos so that they can justify, this takeover, because they don't care if it breaks up. They see the collapse of our system as a value, because their belief is it doesn't work. You can't rebuild, Marxism and communism, or build it, with so much freedom left. So you have to get rid of it. Wipe the slates clean. And maybe that explains why, the numbers keep going up. 200 million people were killed in the 20th century by authoritarian government. And that's why people have to wake up, because there's no evidence that a free society and anybody that had the moral integrity of following libertarianism, no, that would be impossible. But that doesn't remove the fact that man is imperfect, and you're always going to have good versus evil, and we have to learn how to handle that in a civilized manner.
As you're talking about our foundation that might be rotten, Dr. Paul, the U.S. values its gold reserves on its balance sheet at $42.22. Why is this? And is the idea that the gold hasn't been audited since 1974 correct?
That might be, but I don't think they want anybody to be paying any attention to it. So they just leave it alone, because economically speaking, it's irrelevant. But we worked hard trying to get a true audit of the gold, and that may be it. But if there's a calamity, which we're alluding to, those individuals in charge, and it's not going to be our current president. I don't think he's capable of managing what I'm talking about.
Before we continue, help us by smashing that YouTube like button and subscribe now to this channel. This shows the algorithm that you value the information, and it helps us spread this message. Sharing is caring. Please like and subscribe now. Thank you. And now let's continue.
But there are people, a company like BlackRock is going to have a lot of influence in picking up the pieces, and they may know exactly where the gold is too. So no, there will be some, but that's why in my planning, personal planning, I was a coin collector as a kid. We actually still had silver in the money, and there was copper pennies back then too. So I've saved all this time, but I never really thought that everybody else was going to do it. But I think the preparation is really very important. It has to be I want people to have something that they can control. And I have a little reservation on crypto because I don't fully understand it. But I want people to have control, and that to me is having it. But then you come down to it. Ron, you're kidding yourself. What did Roosevelt do? For the most part, he'd march into your house and take it. So it's liberty that is the solution. So and that is important. I think there is a natural tendency when people understand, are given the choice, they will opt for liberty, especially when they discover, and we blame the right things, that it's authoritarianism and it's the hoodlums in Washington and the other governments of the world that are the real problems that we have to deal with.
Exactly as you were mentioning about Roosevelt, Dr. Paul, if we get a dramatic appreciation of the value of gold versus the US dollar, what do you think the risk of gold being made illegal again is?
I think that it probably won't be, but it'll be equivalent. I don't think they're going to do what Roosevelt did and come and knock on the door and make you turn in your gold. But they're going to make it very difficult to use, because if they think you can circumvent government controls, they're not going to like that. So if we're still, and even when the breakdown comes, there still could be dollars, there are still pounds, even though they're not a reserve currency. There still could be a dollar. But let's say for living condition, I have my silver eagle or my gold eagle, and I would need some Federal Reserve notes to buy some bread. If I have to turn it in, and gold is $5,000 an ounce, and they give me the equivalency of 1,000, there's going to be a tax on it. I think they can do that because they do that all the time. But that's when the confrontation is going to occur, because I think in some ways there's a healthy attitude still exists in America, that they should be allowed to own guns. In Texas, they actually eliminated this whole thing that you had to have a preliminary check to own a gun. So there are some movements in the direction of self-reliance, but it's still. The bottom line is, and the founders recognized this, they say you had a totally free society, or if you followed the Constitution, John Adams said, it's not going to work if you don't have a moral standards by the people that they're following. And so it doesn't work. But if everybody became an anarchist and said the gun is going to decide everything, it's not going to work. So that's going to invite people to do different things. But I think that, and if you had only moral people go to Washington, things would be a lot better too. But they would have to accept the idea that welfareism and warfareism is illegal, immoral, and unconstitutional, and they had to repeal all that stuff. But that set of standards is available to people who will look for it. Even as bad as the internet is, there's a lot of information out there. If you do some research, you can find some good stuff out there that will explain this. But you have to have a basic intelligence. You have to know what the goals are. You want to live? Do you want to just modify an authoritarian society, or do you want to live in a free society? See, I don't think this modification. Well, we want to be a moderate. We only want 10%. We're only going to introduce a income tax of 5%, and that won't be too harmful. But guess what? If they're able to tax your income, they say that they own your income, and they'll tell you how much you can have. 5% is 100% of the authority. So when the government gets 100%, then the goose has been cooked. So I think the people, have to realize that is the big issue. How much authority you give your government, and the smaller the better. Well, I'll tell you. And most people, when they go to Washington, they sort of accommodate. Just the way Washington works. Getting on committees and raising money and all this stuff. They accommodate by sort of joining the gang. But I can tell you one thing very sincerely. Over the years, every day I was there, I was more reluctant to support hardly anything what the government is doing, because I think self-government is the government that I really want. But that also means that we're dealing in the area of personal morality too, and how to handle those who don't believe in that, and they still believe like government believes that if they need it, they'll take it. There's still a lot of that. That's what you're witnessing on the streets when you see these hoodlums just crashing windows and taking and walking away, police standing by, and they couldn't do anything. They didn't even try to do anything. I mean, I think that's a result of government mismanagement. But I think that in a free society, a libertarian society, it would only come about if you had a moral defense of that society. But to look for a perfect society is more than you can hope for, because there's not going to be a perfect society. But certainly, the bigger the government, the worse our society gets.